All right, here we are at the Your Coach podcast with my very special guest, Alex Sear. So we're not the Marathon Handbook podcast. We don't have fancy intro music. We're just here. Here we are. So Alex, thank you for coming on. It's you're probably like the biggest YouTube star we've ever had on the podcast here.
Jeez.
Um,
Thanks for
and
having me.
and so Alex is here not only because he's a significant member of the running media, but also because I coach him and he had a great half marathon debut this weekend. So we're going to kind of do a kind of a coach athlete post race debrief, um, sort of for everyone to see, so you can kind of get a sense of like the kinds of questions and things like that. So, but to start, Alex, why don't you just tell us, like all the guests tell us how they got into running and sort of what brought you to this point.
Sure, yeah. Well, I guess I'm 29 years old, which I think gives me like, holy crap, 20 years of experience inside of running. That makes me feel so old. I think I started running really informally when I was 9 or 10. A cross country meet when I was in grade 4. I just happened to go to, and I won my little region in PEI. So that's where I'm from, Prince Edward Island. And I think that's what it is. It's like when you're a kid, when you notice that you're kind of good at something, you get motivated by it. So it's just something I kept doing on the side. Like seemingly everybody else at that age, I was a hockey player. So
Mhm.
there were like two running races throughout the year, cross country and then track provincials. And that was it. I didn't really dabble in training. It was just show up and run as hard as you can. And then I'd say I'd really got into running when I was around 16. So maybe grade 11, when I went to my first Canadian national championship, like the Legion championships, and got absolutely cleaned by people who are still running very well today. Some of these are professional athletes, and others were just, kids who had taken training very seriously throughout their middle school, high school. And I think that opened my eyes to seeing, how good someone can be when they make this their main sport. And that motivated me to pursue it, at least on a varsity level. And from there, I went to St. FX University, trained under Coach Bernie Chisholm for 4 years. Those were still 4 of my favorite years of running. We had a really tight crew of teammates, and many of us were at roughly the same like running level, running speed. So we kind of grew up together inside of running and also outside of it. And we're still really tight today. And we won a couple conference championships, but the same thing kind of happened while I was at St. FX. It was in there was you could be good on the East Coast, but also when you travel to Ontario for races or national championships, you again would see what else was out there. And so after my undergrad, it motivated me to keep pursuing running, and I continued my studies too. So moved to Windsor, Ontario, ran there for 2 years, set some good track PBs, a 1500-meter PB that I still have not come close to touching or even trying to touch.
What is it?
347.
Ooh.
Yeah, I was there. I was training under Coach Gary Malloy, and my main training partner would have been Nick Falk. So he was a 340 guy,
Yeah.
right? So like most workouts, I was also training a system that I don't think we touched all that much at St. FX, where things were a bit more like long distance and mileage.
Hmm.
At Windsor, it was just like, your workouts 3x400 as fast as you can. And it was just so different. And I
Yeah.
think that opened like, that tapped into like some muscles I didn't use or some speed that I didn't know I had.
Huh.
Um, from there, so that was 2 years, 2017, 2018. After that, I ran into a bunch of injuries. I can't really put my finger on why, but probably just overstretching, overtraining. There were many races, right? When you do a 1500, when you're a 1500-meter runner, you can race every weekend for,
Yeah.
7, 8 weekends in a row. And I think one year I just really stretched it, and one injury led to another. And the long story short is I was pretty much out of the sport for nearly 2 years. And after that, I moved to Toronto, first to do journalism school and then to start my career as a writer or journalist. And so I've been living in Toronto for the last 4 years, three of which were mostly spent on the sidelines in terms of running. It was a lot of back and forth, like 3 months of good running and then pop a good 10K. You run a 30-30, let's say, and then
Yeah.
2 months off, run a good 5K, 2 months off with injuries. And Yeah, I mean, we could dig into any part of this, but to shorten it a little bit, that brings me to this year where I just finished a 16-week training block, which feels long to me, and finally was able to pop a good half marathon. Like this was a debut. I'd been trying to actually train and run a half marathon for maybe 2 years, and three times it happened that I made it to week like 10 and then blew up into an injury and then had to forego the season. So
Mhm.
yeah, the I'm you're catching me on a good note, which is great for your podcast. Like this is
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
But no, we just finished the season, and yeah, now I'm like I'm a half marathoner now. I can call
Yeah.
myself that.
That's right.
Mm,
Yeah. So a couple questions about what you were saying. Like it's interesting the idea of, starting somewhere and then kind of when you travel a bit or your eyes get open to the next level.
mm.
Do you think that you could still experience that given like how well you know the sport now? Like I don't think you would be surprised by any level of running necessarily. But if like you ran 65 high, let's say,
Mm.
right? Um
65 super high.
65 super high. Um, obviously you know all about people running like, under an hour and things like that. Like what what do you think what sort of do you think that there's a sort of a mental shift or something required in order for you to kind of drop into that next tier of like 62 to 64 kind of half marathon runners, or do you feel like you kind of know but you just got to do the work?
Yeah, well, I think you nailed it. Like if you say mental shift, it's very much a mental shift. So I had a good conversation with Lee Wasalius about this, who's
Mm,
a longtime friend of mine and now one of Canada's very top marathoners. He was second Canadian at the Toronto Waterfront Marathon, ran at 2:13.
yeah.
And he faces that a lot. And I suppose I'll be starting to face it too, where you have an idea of what you're good for, like what you're able to run. Like I could wrap my head around like me, Alex, I'm good for a 66. I can run a 66. But if you told me that I can run a 63 or 64, I'd kind of say, that sounds a bit too fast for me right now.
Yeah.
Even though I know that that's out there, I know that many people can run that and much faster. It's different knowing that it exists from knowing that you can do it. And so
Mhm.
when I was talking to Lee about this, he called it a mental shift. He said, at some point, I just need to see myself as someone who's as good as these 210, 211 guys in
Mhm.
Canada and go out in that speed. And I mean, we can get into my race a bit later, but I think I brushed up on some of that. Now that I've had, the 24 hours to sober up a little bit
Yeah.
and think about the race clearly, I think I did kind of set a bit of a goal that ended up being maybe a little limitation on myself of, listen, this is your debut. This is what you've run for 10K, 30 low. Okay. You've never run a half. It would be a little foolish to think you can go 64 just like that. And so aim for 66.
Mhm.
So I think it's obviously a physical shift. You need to keep putting the work in, but there's also a mental part that comes into that. And not to digress too much, but I had a conversation with Hudson Grimshaw Surratt, who
Yeah.
ended up winning the
Yeah.
half marathon. And he's from Yarmouth, and he's like, and he says this himself, like he's not someone to like follow all the elites super closely and have
Mhm.
an idea of what everyone should be running. And so he just kind of went out with Justin Kent thinking, this feels good. And
Mhm.
sometimes those plans don't work out, but it ended up working out perfectly for him because he didn't limit himself mentally, which I thought was kind of cool.
Yeah, that's it. There's sort of that two approaches, the sort of like, dumb, not dumb, but like just sort of blind approach where you're just like, well, I'm just gonna go run and you don't really know what you're doing, and that can be good because you don't, as you say, limit yourself. But I think in your case, I think that was the goal that we set around 66, and it was a reasonable goal. And like the point, and especially considering your injury history and stuff, like let's just do that, just check that box. And and now we can, we'll get into like the future, but like now you have something to kind of to step off from.
Mhm.
And you think the risk of trying to go for 64 and then maybe it doesn't go so well, and then you don't really have that, like, people can say, well, I was in 66 shape but I went a little too hard, and it's like, well, but you didn't actually run the thing. So but now you've actually run the thing. So you've kind of got that. I think, do you find it's also helpful because there was just such a massive East Coast presence, and your club, the Slow Ships, were just everywhere. Do you find that helps? Like, do you look around and see those guys who've mostly moved up to the marathon, but like Hudson as well, like, and think, like, well, if they're there, I can be there.
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of these guys I see as my total equals in that when we were 18, we were neck and neck. When we're all healthy and running well, we're neck and neck. So it absolutely helps. And I mean, that goes without saying, but just the positive energy of having everyone there shooting for a PB, and most of us, the majority of us actually did it. So that was super cool. I mean, my personal race experience was crazy because I got to run with Lee for the majority of it because he was pacing for 212 and I was trying to go 66. And so I had the privilege of like at 16, 17K when things started getting hard, looking at Lee and this guy's barely breathing. So that doesn't make me feel great. But also, it's just like, hey, you got this, keep going. And you can't say that very often in a race. So that part was super cool. And I think all of us felt it. Like we all agreed that it was a huge weekend for the ships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So take us through the race. Like how did it go? Like sort of from start to finish. Like how did it play out, and compare that maybe to what your expectations were.
Okay. I'll start from the very beginning and just throw this out there. If you're not a half marathoner or full marathoner, if you're like me and most of the races you've done recently are track races or 5Ks and 10Ks where they spot you and say, "Oh, Alex, you're an elite, go in the front." The start of the race can be stressful as hell. Okay, because you got to find the start. There are 20,000 people
Yeah.
on University Avenue. You pretty much need to muscle your way to the elite corral.
Mm-hmm.
That was stressful. Like if you're in this situation, give yourself time. Anyway, once I got there, things were good, but the race was way easier than expected, at least the first part of it. So
Mm-hmm.
you and I had a conversation the night before, and you said things should feel easy at 10K.
Mm-hmm.
And I struggled to wrap my head around that because most of my other road races,
Yeah.
when you do a 5 or a 10, it hurts right away. Like even a 10K, 2 or 3K, and you're not that comfortable. You're really close to your lactate threshold. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was used to having this like feeling of as soon as the gun goes off, you're uncomfortable. And so what I told myself was, look, if I want to go 66, I just need to, there's a 212 pacer and it's Ben Preisner, who's a 208 guy and has a reputation as a good pacer and is a very solid runner.
Yeah.
And then you have, well, Lee, as I mentioned, Andrew Alexander is going to be in that group and a bunch of us half marathoners. So I said, I don't need to really think about the pace. I just need to stay on this group and hope that it feels okay. And to my surprise, we're clicking kilometers 3, 4, 5K. And I try not to look at my watch because it's a long race and I didn't want to start thinking about splits too early.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember looking at my watch for the first time at 5K and seeing 15:30
Mm-hmm.
and thinking, this was the easiest 15:30 of my life.
Yeah.
And that's a good feeling.
Yeah.
But still you're telling yourself there's 16K to go. Like it's your first half. You're kind of apprehensive about the length of it. And so I just took it a kilometer at a time. The Toronto half marathon is it's a great half marathon. I think the Toronto race weekend, the best race is in fact the half because
Okay.
that's the fast part of
Yeah.
the course, right? Everyone complains about the second part of the course, how the marathon gets hard in the second part because of landscape. Whereas the half, there's a big downhill on Bathurst Street
Mm-hmm.
between like 3K and call it maybe 7-ish. And so that stretch just flew by. And then you turn right and then you're onto the lakeshore in Toronto, which is my running route every day. So it's very familiar, it's very flat. And so I let the kilometers just click by. And at 10K, I'm still running next to Lee, running behind Preisner. And I split 31:09. And again, I think it was not that long ago where I would be totally happy with that as a 10K time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not breathing yet. This
Yeah.
is crazy.
Yeah.
And after 10, I told myself, all right, well, I should probably take one of these little water cups because, so again, a 10K runner doesn't
Yeah.
really know anything about fueling. You just go
Sure.
and you race. I had no gels and nothing like that. I know a half is kind of split down the middle. Some people do take gels, some people don't. I didn't. And so at around, I think 11 or 12K, I get to this water station and I say, okay, I'm going to try myself at like taking one of these cups.
Yeah.
And so the first cup I try for, I missed the cup entirely. And I thought to myself, okay, good try. That was the first try. Let's try this again.
That's a good try.
And so I pass a bunch of the volunteers, and I see one with his hand way out with a cup in his hand. So, all right, well, this is mine. So I go and try to just like pinch the cup out of his hand and take it gracefully.
Yeah.
But I mess it up and then like push the cup onto him. And then I
Oh
hear him go,
no.
I hear him go like, whoa. And I thought, geez, you idiot. What am I doing? And so I'm 0 for 2 in the cups. So I try again. I go for number 3. I take the third cup and I get it in my hand. But before I actually go and drink the water, like the motion of my running just splashes all the water out of the cup. So now empty cup still. I said, okay, do I try this a 4th time, or have I made a fool of myself? I said, no, well, I'm going to take the water. And so there's one more volunteer at the very end of this like entire water station. I've missed like 100 cups. There's one left. All the other guys have had their cups. I say, okay, well, I'm getting this cup. And so I slow down a tiny bit to make sure I get the cup, and I grab it. And as I grab the cup, I speed up, say, okay, I'm going to drink this. And as I go and lift my hand, I've noticed there's not much water. And I rethink my plan. I don't think I'm going to be able to take this down. So I'm just going to dump it on my head.
Oh no.
And so I take the water, I dump it on my head. But in the process of doing that, I knock my gooder glasses off and they're gone. So, so I got no
Was this
water.
the 318 split? There was like one split for some reason that said 318. I don't think that was actually right, but I feel
No,
like all these
that
shenanigans may have made that one a little bit of a slower split.
I don't know what that split was. I'll have to check. I think the 318 was a glitch because I don't think like any
Everybody
of
had
us
that
slowed
split.
down.
Like I saw
Yeah,
yours and I was like, uh-oh. And then I looked at Hudson and Ryan and Miles and they all had the same like weird drop. I'm like, oh, okay, it must be the course or
it
something.
was it one of the last
It was like the
kilometers?
the 10K to 15K, I think, or something.
Gotcha.
Or maybe
Oh,
15 to
oh, the
20. I don't know.
yes,
Anyway.
that
Yeah.
was a glitch because that said that was our pace for between 10 and 15. As
Yeah.
in like 5 of those kilometers would have been 318.
Yeah.
No, that just wasn't it. I don't know what happened there.
Hmm.
But no, I think that split was fine, but I mean I got no water. So I just gave up on it. Kept running, made it to 15K. I think the 15K split was 46:50-ish. So still on good
Hmm.
pace. And that's when I really gained some energy because you told me before the race, you said this is going to get hard at 15,
Yeah.
and it wasn't yet hard.
Uh-huh.
And so I just kept pacing. The group was still together. Meanwhile, Hudson is the top half marathoner at the moment running with Justin Kent, and we see them up the road. They're maybe barely a minute ahead.
Yeah.
And the guys in our group, like turn by turn, are trying to bridge the gap. Matt Viveros goes and comes back to us. Miles Avalos goes and gets hung out in the middle. And then Ryan Tyrell goes and somewhat succeeds in catching up to that first group and is running somewhere in the middle. So at 16K, 17K, I'm running in 4th place for the half marathoners. And a part of me is like, you feel good. Go get these guys.
Mhm.
And then another part of me saying, no, there's still 4 kilometers left. Don't
Yeah.
know what it's going to feel like. You're
Yeah.
well on pace. You're on 66 flat pace. Stay where you are. Be patient. And
Yeah.
so that's what I decided to do at 19K, 19 and a half. That's when the marathoners continue
Yeah.
eastward and we start like kind of peeling off towards the north. And so I peel off and I see Miles in my purview. I feel like Hudson is gone. Tyrell is also probably 20 seconds ahead. And so when we turn onto Bay Street, I have some energy left, but it ends uphill, right? So I just grit my teeth and say, okay, I'm going to sprint it and see what I can do. And I caught up to Miles and we yo-yoed for that last little bit. And
Yeah.
then I ended up ahead. And with about 10 seconds to go, I saw the clock
Yeah.
and I
I saw
see
your
the
face. I saw
time.
your face when you saw the
Oh,
clock.
it
Eyes.
was a total race fit. Well, I think I like audibly said like, come on, or shit or something,
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
was like, I knew it's like 60, 66 or 65:59 and make all
Yeah.
the difference. Right. And so I sprinted and then just got it 65:58. So
Mhm.
yeah, I was over the moon with it. Um, I was really happy with the time. I'm happy that like finished it, that I have a half to my name. It's kind of like you said, I think there's more in the tank. There might have been more in the tank even that day,
Mhm.
but to me, there was a lot of value in just putting a stake in the ground and saying, okay, this is what I can do for half. Next time I'll do a better one.
Yeah. for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think that that's yeah, you executed it, the right way for the day. Like any other time for sure, like that sort of 16K mark when the guys are kind of taking their shots, like it's kind of good to kind of let people try and see. But if you're sitting there feeling really good, then like at some point you can just kind of go. But I think not having raced the distance, yeah, just let it happen. I mean, you still still ended up in a good spot, like race wise and stuff. So I think that's good. So tell us about the shoes now. So because the shoes were a thing, they were special. Also, on the point of the shoes, you led me astray because you were like, "Oh, the Chepton Gated shoes," but that's not what she wore. She wore
Yeah,
Nike.
no, yeah, she wore the Alpha Flies. I don't know why I thought that. I went back and I looked because I was writing a script. We're putting a video together about this half marathon, and I wrote that in the script. And I was like, hang on, is she not a Nike athlete? And so
Yeah.
yeah, I had to correct myself. She didn't wear these. So I mean, had she worn the Pro Evo, she was probably good for a 207, but that's
Bro.
for another day. Yeah, so no, the shoes, this is a whole thing. So a little more background about me. Like, as you mentioned, I do some running media. One thing I do is I review shoes. And a good perk that comes with reviewing shoes is that you get to try out a bunch of different shoes, right?
Mhm.
And so I have a pretty good take on which ones I think are the best. Like before this this half marathon, I was debating between two pairs, the Asics Metaspeed Sky Paris, which I've worn for all my road races this year. And then the Nike Alpha Fly twos, not the threes, the twos, which I quite like and was probably going to wear them because they have a bit more muscle and bounce than the Meta Speeds. And I thought they'd fit better for a half marathon. But the elephant in the room when I review shoes, these shoes is always look, these are probably not the best shoes in the world because the best shoes in the world I cannot find, I arguably cannot afford, and
Arguably.
they're the Adidas, obviously Adios Pro Evo 1, right?
Yeah.
The shoes that are much lighter than most other super shoes that are predominantly foam. They look like they're made out of a 3D printer. They're see-through. They're super light and have a bunch of muscle to them, and they're $500 USD, and they're super super hard to find. And so I kind of had given up on them because, we messaged companies, said, look, if there's a chance to review these, we
Yeah.
would take it in a heartbeat. And they just never have them in stock. On Saturday, the day before the race, I'm at home. So I live in the west end of Toronto, which is about 3 or 4 kilometers away from the Nexus where the race begins, where the big shopping mall is, where Young Dundas Square is. And a friend of mine, well, I think Lee Weselius actually texts us and says, hey, they have some Evos at the mall. And he bought a pair.
At the mall. So it wasn't even at
Yeah.
the expo.
No, my guess is that because the expo was predominantly Asics, right? Because
Oh,
Asics is
okay.
the main sponsor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe there was no room for
Okay.
that. But
Yeah.
for sure they were at the mall because of the marathon. Like I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure they had a shipment because of
Yeah.
it. And so
Like the Eden Center?
yes, the Eaton Center.
Okay.
Yeah. So like everyone and their dog is there. It's so packed. I decided to go. I said, well, like, whatever. I mean, I was going to meet some friends for dinner around that area anyway. So I go early and I walk into the mall and there are treadmills set up at the Adidas store and it's flooded with runners. And I think, and there's a Pro Evo right in the front as a like demonstration piece.
Mhm.
And I tell myself, there's no chance that there are still some pairs left.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, I'm talking to Michael, right?
Mhm.
Our friend and my
Yeah.
colleague at Marathon Handbook, and he's as eager as I am to get his hands on a pair of shoes. I'm a size 11, he's a size 12. So he says, if there's a size 12, like get it for me, I'll pay you back. It's okay.
Yeah.
And so I asked the worker there, I say, hey, do you still have pairs? She says, we have one pair left. I
Uh-huh.
said, are they size 11 or size 12? And she goes, they're 11.5.
Okay.
So I called Michael. I said, all right, this is where we are. There's a pair of shoes. It's not perfect for you or for me. It's in the middle. And then Michael had just run Chicago this
Yeah.
fall, right? So he says, well, look, I ran my race. You try them on. And
Yeah.
if you like them, obviously you keep them. And so I put them on. I tie them super tight. I run on the treadmill with my civilian clothes. I have jeans and a button-up shirt, and obviously they feel amazing. And and so I bite the bullet. I say, okay, I'm going to get them. In worst case, if they feel too big, well, I'll give them to Michael in the long run. So I buy the shoes. They cost $724, and like I don't like to flex prices on things, but that's ridiculous. Like
Yeah.
a pair of shoes is
Well,
seven hundred
you're a
twenty four
you're a
dollars.
young man with a job, no kids. Like
Yes, and
you can throw money at things.
yes, and I told my girlfriend Alexis about this. I said I just bought $720 pair of shoes, and she was thrilled because she was
Yeah.
like, "Good, okay." She
She's
says I
like,
don't
good. Now
shop
I can
enough.
go get some $700
Exactly.
shoes.
She's like, "We're going shopping." So what do you mean we? We're okay. So I got these shoes, and I justified it, right? It's like you put in all that time into training. Why not stretch the last little bit and try to get that last percentage of time if you can?
Mhm.
So I buy these shoes. They feel amazing. Any shoe heads who are listening are maybe thinking about this rumor about the Pro Evo ones that
Mhm.
they only last for one race.
Mhm.
That's how they were marketed, not by Adidas, but I don't know where this began, but the idea around them was that they only last one race, like one marathon, and then they disintegrate and you got to throw them out.
Mhm.
Michael and I were in Boston, where Adidas is the title sponsor of the expo. So the Evos were all over that expo, and we got to talk to one of the or a few of the Adidas like product guys and the developers, and they were adamant that that was a myth. And one of them
Mhm.
even told us that it would last several hundred kilometers.
Yeah.
And so that's to be seen, right? But I'll
Yeah.
probably wear them again in my next race. But no, they felt amazing. They were super light. They were awesome, and
Cool. And
maybe
do
maybe
you
this.
attribute the sort of the feeling of like of how easy it felt? Because knowing what your goal was going in and having these wild shoes and then hitting like your goal just right, like was there a feeling of like, oh, like why didn't I blow it out of the water? Or do you attribute that like the sense of how easy it felt to the shoes, or maybe just your training?
Yeah, I mean, who knows, right? It's so hard to know with the shoes. I think the training, but I'll say this, like 307s, okay? 307s was my pace for the majority of it. 307s had never felt that easy,
Hmm.
not even 2 weeks ago.
Hmm.
And I like to think that that's the product of a good taper, right? A good taper, a good training
Yeah.
phase, right? And and likely that's what it is. Maybe the shoes helped. When I
Hmm.
work out, when I do threshold workouts, I'll usually wear I won't wear super shoes.
Hmm.
I'll wear super trainers. So
Hmm.
something in the middle, right? Like the
Yeah.
Asics Super Blast, for example, which are they have some bounce to them, but they're also much heavier than what I wore on race day.
Hmm.
And they're made more for durability and comfort than for pure speed. So yeah, the shoes are better than what I've been working out in, or they're faster than what I've been working out in. But there was this feeling of
Hmm.
did I was I too soft? Like
Hmm.
you get I mean, I'm no expert in the half marathon yet, but I feel like if you get to 19K feeling good and
Hmm.
even cracking a smile, you got to think, yeah, maybe I could shave even a minute off
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, but again, like that was the plan. The plan was to
Mhm.
get it done and just learn the distance a bit. So let's talk about the training. What do you think went well in the build up?
Mm.
What were some positives?
Some positives. Well, okay, goes without saying, making it 16 weeks generally healthy is not something I've done since like 2018. So with that, I'm really happy. Um, I wanted to talk about the threshold. Okay. So you and I had a conversation. So you and I, just for some context, we met about this, I think like in June when I was on another podcast and talked about being self-coached. And I think you
Yeah.
reached out and said, did you ever consider maybe getting a coach?
Yeah.
And then you were in Toronto, so we met for coffee and we talked training and a bunch of other things. And one of the things you mentioned was this love for double threshold that everyone seems to have nowadays. That it's like kind of the sexy new topic where you do a threshold workout in the morning and then another one in the afternoon on the same day. And if and tell me if I'm butchering this, but I think your take on it was just like coaches and athletes trying to find ways to get more volume at threshold inside of a week. And then you had this idea of like, why do we have to like jam it all inside of one day? Like that's a pretty onerous day instead of maybe spreading it out a little bit more across runs. And so what we did was outside of it's 3 workouts a week.
Mm-hmm.
none of them being completely overbearing. Like
Yeah.
rarely would I finish a workout absolutely destroyed. But on top of these 3 workouts a week, a couple times a week, I'd have these little like fartlek sessions inside of a run, right? Where it's like 5 minutes at threshold and then a little like mini fartlek breakdown at the end with
Yeah.
1 minute, 45, 30, 30, 4 times 15 seconds.
Yeah.
And I, that took some getting used to that. Like essentially you're running hard 5 days a week,
Yeah.
but you're never running hard for long necessarily on any day.
Mhm.
After like a few weeks of that, like I'd say probably around week 11 or 12 of the training block,
Mhm.
threshold just didn't phase me anymore. It was like breakfast. It was just whatever.
Yeah.
And that was cool because I think throughout my running career, when someone would be like, hey, you're doing 3 by 10 minutes at threshold, or some people call it tempo,
Mhm.
and you got to hold like that uncomfortable pace for a long time. Like those are the grindy workouts. Those are the workouts you're not looking forward to.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
if I'm just looking just quick at your plan, like 2 weeks ago, so sort of like the peak week of the plan,
Mhm.
you did 85 minutes of threshold in that week.
Okay.
And so there was a long run with 30 minutes, and then the other workout was 4 times 10. And then the other days there were just these little 5 minutes, plus the little like the faster stuff too. Like it wasn't only threshold. There's some interval pace, like where you're going, a little faster for a minute, and then 45 seconds, 30 seconds, just to turn legs. But like, yeah, like that's a 85 minutes of threshold in a week where you ran, 10, it says 10 hours there, like 110K. So that's 10, that's 600 minutes. So that's not, I mean, it's not like, yeah, when you get in the bigger minutes, it's kind of like, it doesn't get to that 20% sort of 80-20 thing anymore because it's a little higher, but
Mhm.
still like, still a good 15% of the week running at threshold. So
Mhm. Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah. It's a lot. And it got me fit. I mean, that seems so, obviously when these guys came to town to run the race, we compare training notes, right?
Yeah.
How is the training build? And a lot of the guys I was talking to were doing the marathon. So
Mhm.
take that with a grain of salt, but
Mhm.
also the comment that I would receive from them is like, wow, you're very low mileage.
Mhm.
Because if you averaged out my weekly mileage,
Yeah.
which uh you told me is not something you do, and that's probably a good thing.
Yeah.
But still, if you average out the last 14 weeks, which is like roughly the length of the build,
Yeah.
I'm hovering around 80 to 85
Yeah.
kilometers a week,
I
which,
can I have it here. So if
okay,
you want to
nice.
know,
Yeah,
like
you
this
probably have
week,
this more officially.
including the race was 87.
Okay.
And then last week 110, 80, 105, 70, and that was a race week, 107, and then 50, that was a race week, and I think you were traveling. 40, that was the France week. So there was a bit of a
Mm,
thing.
There was
Uh,
there's a back issue there
Yeah.
too. The yeah.
95, 100, 97, 80, 73. And then I guess we started at like 20 and then, yeah. And then because you were doing cross training and stuff and whatever. So like, yeah, I mean, and I feel like, I feel like I just talked about this. Maybe I was talking about it at the course on the weekend, but like, the plan wasn't like, okay, you're going to run this many kilometers this week. It was really like, okay, here's the big workouts, and then you're going to do these runs, and you just sort of fill in the runs. And so, yeah, like there are a few weeks over 100, but yeah, probably averaging like 80, 90. Yeah, and that is lower than, if someone's doing a marathon, probably you want to do more than that. But you were where you were, so I think it would have been foolish to try to ramp that up any quicker than we did. So yeah,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
total mileage wasn't ever like a goal, I think, of the training like that. We didn't really even talk about it, I don't think.
Hmm.
Maybe
Yeah.
in the
And it
next
was
phase we
nice.
can, but even that, I don't
Sure.
know. Yeah.
Yeah. It was nice because it like, I mean, the little bit of coaching that I think I know pretty well is like you don't stress someone on volume and intensity at the same time, right? Like you'll
Mhm.
have a build and maybe you're focusing on volume, then you'll have another build and maybe you're focusing on intensity. And so this felt like a pretty big departure from my previous intensity levels, but I'd say that like in the last few years, my plans were more volume based, like 2 workouts a week, and then when I nail it, for 10, 12 weeks, I'd probably go and average something like 110, 115 kilometers.
Mhm.
So yeah, but it's a give and take, right? Because you add a workout in there, then suddenly that becomes difficult to hold. The other thing I really liked about this build was races. Like, I
Yeah.
think the pace was just super good. I had 4 races. I
Mhm.
know some people are just more so like maybe one and done or two and done in a season. I actually quite like racing 3 or 4 times. I find that it helps. I find that I can race well for like an 8 week block or whatever.
Yeah.
And also that I have my best end of season races when I'm like pretty tried and true on the race course. So that was cool. Like 4 races that all motivated me in a different way. I had one that was right downtown, right? The Yorkville 5K
Yeah.
that I had never done and I knew was fast. I had one in Vancouver, the East Side 10K, which was a race I'd never done before in a province I'd never really raced in before. Again, novelty. One in Stratford, the Stratford 5K, which was a really fun event. And I was like probably the heavy favorite on the ticket, which is
Yeah.
like kind of a fun ego boost every now and then. You go there and just say, I'm
Yeah.
just gonna rip this and win this and command
Yeah.
this race.
And what was your
And then
first K for that one? Like 240 something.
oh, let's not talk about it. Yeah, 242, I think. That's your fault. You told me not to look at my watch and just go out hard.
Yeah.
So
But I think, you know what I liked about the races was that, I think your approach to them was really good. Like sometimes people approach races like every race is like the big race and they
mhm,
get all stressed out or whatever. But like I think, your approach really was, like, as you say, like these races are to help me get ready for the race that I really want to run well in. And so you were kind of willing to try different things and stuff. And I think the difference between the Yorkville and the Stratford in terms of like not looking at your watch. Like I think in Yorkville, I said the same thing, but there you had other people to run with, and it ended up just being like a race.
mhm.
And so you kind of you run that first K is always fast too, I think. But there's people around, and you kind of get a sense of like, yes, I'm where I'm supposed to be. And then you had a good race and ended up running a PB.
Mhm.
With like no 5K training, which is always good for the threshold sort of contingent to
Crowd,
hear that
yeah.
happening. But then in Stratford, you didn't have that race element of like other people, and you kind of knew how it was going to end up, and it was less like you weren't worried about trying to win necessarily, I guess. So, you just feel good and you go, and then you're like, oh, oops. But you managed to, dial it back, and I think it's good to go through that and go like, well, I guess I can go through it and go out really fast and still run like close to a PB because it was still 14:30 or something, right? So
Yeah,
yeah,
14:30. And
yeah,
also, yeah, I should probably say with Stratford, that's a couple of the other guys racing are faster than me. Like they're 800 guys. And so there
right.
was also that incentive that like if I do leave it to the end sprint, I will lose. So
Yeah.
I'm the favorite if I take this out like that. And so there was also a bit of a strategic element to it.
Yeah. I was
Mm.
I was a little worried about the 10K because I wasn't sure how much you were, kind of stressing over the whole like sub 30
Breaking
thing.
30.
And because and I didn't know that course. Like I asked people about it and we talked about it, and it sounded like it wasn't like a fast course, but it wasn't like a slow course. But I mean, it turns out that, I guess it was Preisner, right, who ran, and he didn't break 30. So
No,
it's kind of like, yeah, like it was a good race.
yeah, I feel like so the weird little thing with doing running media is that a lot of your own running ends up being somewhat public through the reels and the social media and all this stuff. And I think I overplayed the like do or die, gotta
Yeah.
break 30.
Yeah.
Because after the race, I'd like turn on my phone. I had a bunch of messages from people like, oh, I'm so sorry it didn't work out. Like, I hope you're
You
doing
okay?
okay. Let me know if you want to talk. And I was like, guys, I saw Ben Preisner finish with my own eyes. This was
Yeah.
a great race. What are you
Yeah.
talking about? And so no, I was happy with it. It's a tough course. The
Mhm.
Vancouver has like two 10Ks in the year, and the East Side 10Ks, the
Yeah.
fall one that's like a
Yeah.
lot tougher. And then I think the Sun
The
Run in the
sun run is
spring
fast. Yeah, it's all
is
downhill,
fast.
basically.
Yes. Yeah. So
Yeah.
so no, it was good. And no, I think if I can pat myself on the back about one thing this year, it's not being too emotionally invested in any race. And I think maybe that just comes with experience because I
Yeah.
think back in the day, every race felt like life or death, which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
is a lot emotionally to
Yeah.
go through for an entire season. And
For sure.
I think now it's just yeah, they're means to an end. And
Yeah.
then the last race, that's where you take the emotion out. That's where
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Mm,
even this, I mean, even the whole season was a little bit of a like, like a test, like the goal wasn't like win the half or run as fast. It was really like get through this
Get
half,
there.
but I
Exactly.
think it's still all this is like foundation for, and we'll talk about this in a bit, like what's next, and maybe being a bit more aggressive with goals. But I think the approach, can still be the same in terms of, just how you think about things. But before we get into that, more just sort of still going back, like about the training, do you think there were things that could have gone better? Like what can we do to kind of tweak things to get more out of the training?
Mm. This is more my own issue, but yeah, we need to figure something out about this. So one thing we kind of glazed over is that in like week 7 or 8, I threw out my back at the gym. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I was deadlifting like 40-pound dumbbells. Your guideline was exactly this, was like, just learn the motions well, take weights that aren't that much, and just like kind of get used to lifting this new routine. So I was like, cool. And so I'm not being tough on the weights at all. I'm being very conservative. And lo and behold, I go and do my 10th out of 12 deadlifts, and something tweaks in my back and I can't move. And I'm thinking, well, shit, come on, what is this?
Yeah.
And this like incapacitates me fully for like 2 days, and then gets me off workouts for another probably week. I needed time to build back up. Like it was a big muscle that was strained in my back, and luckily it was a more of a 10-day thing than a season thing, and I was fine. But after that, I became super apprehensive at the gym. I did not test myself at all. My strength workouts were pretty lackadaisical. I was confident with some motions and not others. I don't think I'm strong. Like I don't think I'm very strong with weights right now. A, because I don't think that's my natural gift. But also B, I didn't really work on it very much because I was afraid. I was really tentative. So next phase, I don't know. It'd be good to find a way to build strength, like muscle strength, without getting hurt. And this, I'm thinking this was a fluke, and I just became apprehensive because everything else was going so well. Yeah, but that's something I want to work on.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's sort of, that's the thing with strength. It's kind of a catch 22 because you do it because you're not strong, but you have to be somewhat careful, but you don't want to go into things being careful too much because then you can't really get out of it. So yeah, I definitely need to look at that, and I don't know, try to do some maybe work around that, like just sort of more body weight stuff to like strengthen the core and the back to make sure that it can handle the different things. But we can talk about that. And I mean, that's where, sometimes people think of like, they go to the physio when they're hurt, but it might be good to go to the physio preemptively and just say, it's Chris, right? Is your physio, right?
Yeah, Chris
Like, hey
Shepard
Chris,
at the
like
Runners
let's
Academy.
do let's do a workup, and like where are my soft points, and like let's find some exercises to target those things specifically. And then once you can work through that, then you can do a more global strength plan.
Yeah, yeah, no, that was kind of it. The other thing was, and this is like something I think I need to work on. Like the difference between this build and others is that I was many of the workouts were in the same type of zone. Like we did a lot of threshold stuff. Like there were no like sessions on the track where you just do like 10 200s or whatever. And also there were no long workouts at marathon pace. Like I assumed there wasn't much use for that because
No.
I'm not racing a marathon. So it was a lot of threshold stuff. So like 2/3 of the way into the build, I found myself starting to like look into times maybe a bit too much because I knew what I was capable of. I knew what I did last week. I saw the half marathon coming up. So I said, well, I need to be good at 308s. And so I was trying to like just block those thoughts out of my head because I don't think anything good comes from them, right? Like
No, not
you're
really.
just stressing over a pace that you can't hit. I remember one long run in particular. I think it was 2 by 15 that I had inside of the long run. And the first 15 minutes, I just stayed at 306s, 307s. It felt awful. Like it didn't, I was going harder than threshold pace for that day, but I was just telling myself, like, no, you just got to get used to running at that pace because that's what you're going to run for the half. And so I do the first 15. And then start the second, and end up flaming out after 10 minutes. I didn't do the last five. So I was just exhausted,
Yeah.
and then probably put in way too much effort into that run because I was like a bit too married to pace. So that's something that I think I want to work on, and probably comes from the fact that we were at threshold a lot.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And the thing with threshold is that like it's actually not about the pace, it's about the feel. And
Mm,
ideally, like doing so much of it, you can kind of just like run right up to that line and just hang out there and just know what it feels like. And the pace is going to be whatever. I mean, like, so I mean, I'm not you, but I'm training and I'm doing that. And my thresholds vary from like 420s to 445s, depending on
mm,
how tired I am and other stuff. Like but I know the feeling like I just kind of go there and then I don't even look at my watch till after,
right.
and I think there's no sense in trying to push it and be like I have to run 307 for this because that's not what the workout is. It's not a workout that's trying to make your legs turn at a certain speed. It's a workout that's trying to make like change the organism as Bob said this weekend, like to make you more efficient at that in that physiological state. And so and the reason that's I think useful too is that then when you go in a race environment and put the shoes on and you're tapered, the physiological state is the same, but then you can run faster at that state because of all those things as well.
Right.
So if you're stuck on 306 or 307, then you're not that's not really what it's about.
Mm,
Later, we're getting close to talking about the future now, but if you're gonna go after like a track time or something, and like on the track, like at some point on the track, there will be a workout where it's like, okay, like if the goal is to run like whatever, then you have to run Ks at this, like try to run Ks at this pace and do whatever you need to do to run that pace. But those are rare for me. Those are rare workouts. Like those are the kind of like go to the well sort of quote unquote see God workouts where you're really gunning it. Most of the time, the training, even like interval VO2 max workouts, you're still trying to just find the feel. And if you can find the feel, then it's gonna do the work. So yeah, I mean, I don't know how to make you not compare, but maybe I mean I don't know. Do you think like of a greater variety of workouts? I mean, there's only really like a couple of types of workouts you can do. It's kind of like I've fallen into. It's funny. I I've fallen into the Daniels sort of paradigm of like T pace, I pace, R pace. I feel
mm.
like those are really the three useful paces to do, and marathon pace if you need that. Um, and so it's not there's not a lot of variety, I would say, in the training, but
Yeah, no, I don't think I want, like, I mean, if maybe variety in like how we dice the minutes,
mm,
as opposed to like 4 by 8, maybe 10, 8, 6, 6, or I,
sure,
I don't know.
yeah,
Whereas like that would maybe force me to like not think of the workout of a couple weeks ago.
yeah,
Maybe that would help. But
yeah,
I don't want to, I don't know. I think the amount of threshold that we did worked. Like
yeah,
if I have a takeaway from this season, it's that whatever we did worked.
yeah,
And if I were to draw the plan for next season,
mm-hmm,
I don't think I would change the workouts very much. My instinct would be like, okay, we're probably adding a bit of volume. Like that's probably where I would go because it's the next step. But
yeah,
no, I kind of wouldn't want to mess with the amount of threshold we did because I
yeah.
feel fitter than I've probably ever been, especially for the longer stuff.
Mhm. Yeah.
Mm.
So that's it. Like I think, and that's good. I love that you've like bought into the idea. Um, and the reason that we really didn't do a lot of faster stuff is because not only like so I think of the threshold as like the foundation. Like everybody should be doing a lot of that, and then you shift to more specific stuff. But in the case of the half, the threshold is the specific stuff. So
Very,
there's no
yeah.
real shift. But if you're gonna do like a track 5K, then there's gonna be like 2 months there where yes, we're still doing bits of threshold, but like you're doing intervals. Like it's gonna happen, right? And I think that you need to be like okay with that. Like I think sometimes like even myself, I'm like, well, let's keep doing more of this. But like no, like you do need to shift to the specific for the event at some point. But I think you can go a long, long way with a good threshold build. And then it's just sort of timing that like drop down to do enough of the harder stuff that you get that the stimulus, but also because the harder stuff is more like it breaks you down more. right? So I guess, I mean, he's not the only person to come up with this metaphor, but Gareth Sanford talks about like how the threshold stuff is really like a deposit, but the interval stuff is like a withdrawal. It's like a race. Like it's like you're you're asking your body to do a lot. So it's I'm more conservative with that, but I think it's really important for in that moment, like in the future, of like if you're going to do like a track thing or something like that. So on that note, like what are the goals? Like what do you think is next? I'm a little sad, I have to admit, that you so quickly dismissed cross country. Um,
Uh-huh.
cross country is my favorite, but I mean, I think you gotta really be you gotta want to do the thing. Like, there's no point in doing a race that you don't want to do. So I'm not gonna push that point, but I just wanted to put it out there that I love cross country.
Yeah. It's funny, cross country. I somewhat lost interest in cross country after university. To me, I lived and breathed cross country as a varsity athlete, maybe because
Mhm.
of the team aspect.
Right.
And this time around, like I know ACXC is
Mhm.
at the end of November. Um, there's still some time to maybe change my mind. I don't know. But my like my head's just in the roads, like or my heart's in the roads, I guess.
Mhm.
And after this half marathon, like I've way back when I would actually finish seasons and start them again instead of having my weeks dictated by injury all the time.
Yeah.
It would take me at least a week to want to think about running again.
Mhm.
And now we're 2 days post
Mhm.
race, and maybe I'm still in the high of having finished the race,
Yeah.
but I took yesterday off, and I plan to take today off as well.
Okay.
But I didn't get that feeling of wow, I'm so happy that it's over. I need to get away from running. I'm
Yeah.
kind of forcing myself to take a break because
That's
I
good.
kind of know that I need one,
Yeah.
but mentally I'm not tired of it. I actually feel hungry still
Mm.
for something else. So my goal, I guess, is for the next build to build for, I think, maybe the first half in Vancouver.
Mm.
I haven't signed up. I haven't messaged anyone about it. This is just a long term, or
Yeah.
I guess medium term planning. But
Mm.
I'd love to train for another half throughout the winter because I do have a feeling that I can go in the 64s
Yeah.
with a bit of a more aggressive race plan, a
Mm.
race under me where I know that I can string 21
Yeah.
kilometers together.
Yeah.
And I talked so I had a conversation with Michael last night, and he let me know that you two talked about it. And Michael's take, and he might be right, is that my second half marathon, I'm going to butcher because I'm going to go out super hard and then
Right.
try for something and what happened. And then the third half marathon, I'll smash. And if
Yeah.
that happens, that happens. But his prediction is not going to stop me from trying to go super hard in the second one and maybe butcher it. So, but I want to give that a try and see if I can dip down in the 64s and run a more aggressive one.
Yeah.
That's the short term one. I'd say the medium term, I'd love to hop on the track and run a 5K.
Yeah.
In my head, the sounds, again, too fast for what I think I can do, but I
Mhm.
also think I have to shift my mindset around these things.
Yeah.
I'd love to break 14 at
Yeah.
some point.
100%.
Uh,
So that
yeah.
I'll say that like I think it's important to let the athletes choose their own goals and stuff, but I'm
Mhm.
aligned with that. Like that's what I was thinking. I'm like next summer Alex can break 14 on the track. That's
Yeah.
that's where my mind is at too. I
Mhm.
100% think that that's possible for you. So,
Mm. Cool.
yeah.
And then long term is the marathon, right? Like one day I want to get into the marathons. I'm not in a rush, but now that I've done a half,
Mhm.
I see that that's possible, I
Yeah.
think, for me. And that'll be a whole other thing. I think there's a big learning curve with the marathon. I'm
Yeah.
not so eager to do one in 2025. Maybe it'll be later.
Yeah. Take your
Yeah.
time. Take
Yeah.
your time. I
Yeah.
think that, the marathon is a thing, and I think yeah, people feel like that's where they, need to go at some point. And yeah, like I think, and it depends. Like, I'll say it like this, like not trying to, blow smoke or whatever, but like a runner of your level, I think would be well served to really kind of see like how fast you can go in the 5 to 10 and a half, you know, like again, this might sound crazy or whatever, but I feel like, you could get down to like a 61, 62 half and then shift to the marathon. And like I don't think that's that far. I mean, things aren't linear or whatever, but like, I think it's possible. And like, you're built for the marathon. Like, you're kind of a little guy. That's a good thing.
Mm.
You know, I I don't know, like, I mean, 3:47, it's pretty quick. Like, I haven't quite done the calculation in terms of like all your PBs and like which, ones are better, but I think 3:47 is like much better than 14:26 and 30 high or 30 low, like
Yeah.
much better.
What when you put them in these tables, the
Yeah.
347 scores higher. Yeah.
Yeah. So, is that just a function of, that was a time when you were healthy and trained really well for that specific event. Um, and you haven't really had that opportunity with the 5 and the 10 yet, maybe. Be interesting to try some 15s this summer too around the 5K. That
Ha,
would be interesting.
maybe,
I
maybe.
mean, you're there, you might as well. Like, I think, the track is, like you said, you can do 1500s every weekend if you want. So,
Mhm.
and there's opportunities, 1500 night kind of thing, like, might as well. But yeah, I mean, the marathon for sure, I think it's, if you want to do, you gotta, like, it's like the cross country thing a bit, like, you have to kind of want to do it. Like, no one should do a marathon just because they feel like they're supposed to or something like that. Like, you really got to want it. And so then and then sort of paradoxically, then once you want it, then you got to kind of like hold off. It's kind of like my kids wanting to be goalies, and like, from a very young age, and the coaches are like, hey, but you got to learn, like, to be a player first, like, learn
Mhm.
real how to skate really well, and it's like learn the game, and then, like, once you're, older, like 9, then you can start being a goalie. So the uh the long-term development for hockey is out of control. It's very
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
but anyways,
What?
different topic. But like, yeah, so I think those are good goals. Like, I think that, and you didn't mention it, but I think that 30-minute 10K, we need to find a way to make that go down as well. Like, it's also very realistic on the right course. And I mean, you could do like sporting life, and just, but that's kind of not good.
Nah, I don't count it. I don't count it. And no, yeah, that goes without saying. My like the goal I've made very public on my social media and stuff is I want to break 30 before I turn 30, and I turn 30 in August of next year. And so
All right.
I got it. I need to go 29 next spring.
Yeah.
There's a race that I loved last year, and it's the Black Toe 10K that happens in December, and I loved it because it's like if you happen to find yourself to be fit in December, there's
Oh,
no other races, and it's a good event. It's like it's flat, it's fast.
where's
The
this?
It's on the beaches in Toronto.
Okay.
I won't do it this year. I have a wedding. I
Oh.
can't make it. I'll
Hmm.
be on PEI.
Hmm.
But yeah, that otherwise that could have been maybe an option to do it
Mhm.
before next year. But otherwise, I think it'll have to be the spring.
Yeah, I mean, another way of, getting at it is maybe doing a 10,000 on the track, which is,
Mhm.
that's a bit of a different beast too, but I think it's also like, you kind of have to just do it or not do it, because it's not like you get to practice. Like, there's one or two in Canada, right? There'll
Mhm.
be one in Quebec, and there'll be one in BC, and maybe
Yeah.
one in Ontario, and that's kind of it. So,
Mhm.
there might be that opportunity as well. And usually they're, competitive, and pretty fast, and the track is usually faster than the road. But I'm pretty sure you can do it on the road too. So, I think there's, yeah, like, and if you do first half, that's early. So then there's some spring road race time to, go find some fun things to do. So
Mhm.
um cool. Well, I think, like, we kind of covered all the bases there. I'm glad to hear you took a couple days off. Like, I think I put in the plan for this week just like a bunch of easy runs. Like, I think you can run if you want. Like, that's fine, but just as
Oh
you feel,
God, I've been on such an like off phase. I didn't even open the app. Good thing you
Perfect.
told me
No,
that.
that's great. No worries. Like, I don't know. I wasn't sure. I kind of thought you might be like, okay, let's get back to it. Like, if you're considering it, like, yeah, like a season end, and like taking a break, like, it's good to just sort of sign off for a little bit, and just do whatever. So yeah, I mean, you could just ignore the plan for this week then. And when you feel like running again, like, go start running again. And we'll talk about the strength stuff too, maybe a bit more offline, and get some details in there, so you can maybe start that. But like, yeah, I mean, for now, just enjoy the fruits of your labors.
Thanks. I will. Yeah, I mean, and this will be probably for off podcast because we'll probably get into nitty gritty, very not that interesting specific details. But I think our next conversation will have to be about time off because I'm always curious about what's the best way to do it, and maybe I'll cap it at that. I've seen people take 2 weeks. I've seen people take 3 days, and both seem sometimes to work. But yeah, we'll talk about that. But look, John, and John didn't pay me to say this. Like I want to thank you for the season. It's been just really nice to work with a coach. Like I'd been self-coached for years, and just to have someone make the big decisions
Yeah.
was super cool. And I'm just glad that it worked out. It's nice to be running healthy again. And yeah, I'm looking forward to building a plan with someone for the next season instead of kind of feeling my way out, in the dark and just seeing
Yeah.
maybe this.
You're
So
from the videos I've seen, your alter ego, who I assume would be your self coach, is kind of a jerk.
he is kind of a jerk. Yeah, yeah. He's kind of a jerk, and he has no sense of style.
Yeah.
So we're gonna put him to rest.
Do you want to share like some links? Like I'm saying this, Alex has a lot of great YouTube reels about running that are hilarious, and shoe videos and serious things and stuff like that, but a lot of really good content. How do people find your content?
Yeah, no, thanks. I've been doing a lot of work with the Marathon Handbook, which is like it's a running publication across platforms. So we have a website. It's just marathonhandbook.com. And we have a YouTube channel. We have a podcast. Just type in Marathon Handbook, and you'll find us pretty much everywhere. The YouTube has been a super fun project to work on because exactly that. Like we dabble with like just fun, entertaining content, but also try to make some really informative stuff. So we've been really into the shoe reviews, and more we're getting into the more experiential side of things where we'll document a race weekend, for example. So like our next video coming out will be about the Toronto half marathon for me. So that's been a lot of fun. And as for myself, like I'm a freelance writer by trade. So my usual writings are in the Globe and Mail and Maclean's. That's kind of my day job as well. And you can follow me on social media. That's where I post my reels. I'm on Instagram at Searsy_10. Searsy_10. Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
Nickname from
Yeah.
the hockey days, clearly. Seriously.
That is, yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah. It dates from 2011.
All right. Great. Well, thanks, Alex. Great to have you. And hopefully I can come on the Marathon Handbook podcast one day. Love to. I always listen, and you guys are so great. I feel like it's just a conversation among friends. I feel like I'm just sitting there with you guys, but I don't get to actually say anything. But
Well, I think
awesome.
we need another coach to duel with Caitlin. So maybe we'll have like a coach off someday.
I, I'd love to chat with Caitlin. Like, obviously, I don't know her like I know you and Michael. I think that would be very entertaining. And yeah, like, I just like to hear what she has to say, especially about ultras. I coach a couple ultra people, but I don't. I'm probably not as knowledgeable or experienced as she is in it. So it'd be interesting to have that chat. So anyway, all
Well,
right, thanks, Alex, and yeah, till next time.